Hey everybody, it's been a spell, but welcome back inside the den as we sit here in the middle of July and closing in. I know I'm wrapping up summer for everybody. The 4th of July is in the rearview mirror, and after that, it's football season. As much as you're listening to this and you might be outside and you're grilling or heading out on the water, I'm here to tell you it's all over. Because later this week, media days actually begin in college football. The Big 12 will have its media days later this week. The SEC has theirs next week, and then the Big 10 the week after that. So college football is here. Actually, on the day I'm recording this podcast, I got an email from the Missouri Valley Football Conference for the preseason poll and preseason all-conference team. So I'm here again to remind you that summer is over. And with that, it's a perfect segue to introduce our podcast guest for this particular week. And it's one that is a familiar name, clearly, those that follow football in the area and nationally now. Former North Dakota State head coach Chris Klieman, who is about to enter his 5th year as the head football coach at Kansas State. The Wildcats, one of the top stories in college football last season, winning the Big 12 championship, beating previously unbeaten TCU in the Big 12 championship game in Dallas to secure a spot in one of the New Year's 6 games. Klieman and the Wildcats played in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. The Crimson Tide had a pretty big day there against Kansas State, but the irony was not lost on me as covering Klieman for the entire time he was in Fargo, starting in 2011 to his departure at the end of the 2018 football season. When we went to Chicago for the NFL draft, when Carson Wentz was about to be selected in 2016, Klieman was invited and accepted, was on the red carpet in Chicago, and I was giving him a hard time prior to the red carpet ceremony as he was hobnobbing with Urban Meyer, then the coach of The Ohio State, and Nick Saban, the coach then and currently at Alabama. He said, boy, you're a big-timer now, and now here you are 6 years later, and he was facing Saban in a football game in New Orleans on New Year's Eve. So we chat about Kansas State's rapid ascent that was similar to what he did at North Dakota State. Actually, it wasn't an ascent here. He kept the Bison on top after Craig Bohl left, winning back-to-back championships in 2014 and 15, and about his recruiting that he did here, because the last remnants of that are still being felt for 6-year seniors. They were recruited by Chris Klieman to come to Fargo, but you look at the most recent NFL draft picks, Christian Watson, Cordell Volson, and Cody Mauch are all Chris Klieman recruits that came to Fargo. So we chat about that and everything else going on in college football as well. So I hope you enjoy our conversation here with Kansas State head football coach Chris Klieman. I'm going to start with this. I'm looking at the Major League Baseball standings. Your Cardinals are in last. If not for the Mets, the Cardinals be what's going on?
Well, the only thing, and I talked to Riles about this, is, Coach Riley is not real happy about the standings as well. As bad as we are, we took 2 or 3 from the Mets.
I knew
how does that make you feel?
I know it. Hey, July, the Mets are 4-0. I'll just say that. So $350 million can bit you 6 games under 500, I guess. So it's great to see you. I know it's been a few months, and you're already well into 2023. Heck, we were joking off air. Your media days are already next week. So literally the new season begins next week, right?
It really does. I think we're always the first one out of the gate in media days, and our commissioner, Brett Yormark's done a phenomenal job of pumping some energy into the Big 12 with some new schools. We got a new TV contract, so things are looking up for the Big 12.
Tell me about last year, Chris, and just to get where you did to win the Big 12 championship. Was that even ahead of your own schedule of what you had when you got there?
Only because of the pandemic, it probably was. If not, that's kind of what our plan was, to get our 4 years of recruiting classes in. This league is so good. It's so tough. We went to Oklahoma and won. The Big 12 is different because every other year you either have 5 at home, 5 on the road. So with our 9-game conference schedule. So last year was the big year where we had to go on the road for 5 games, and We won at Oklahoma. We won at Baylor. We won at Iowa State. We won at West Virginia. And our kids are kind of kicking themselves because they probably should have won at TCU. We had a big lead at half, and then they did a great job coming back.
That moment, though, the Big 12 championship game, I'm at the Fargo Dome. We're getting ready for a Bison playoff game. There are a bunch of people watching that. It's on ABC. Where does that one rank? You've had some unbelievable football games. Where does that one rank with TCU?
Wow. That's right up there towards the top, Dom. I mean, that's, at North Dakota State, you have to win national championships. And at Kansas State, we strive to win Big 12 championships and get our name in conversations. But we were preseason ranked 5th or 6th in our league. Had some good players coming back, but we had some ups and downs. Got beat by Texas, who's good. Got beat by TCU, pretty good. Got beat by Tulane, which that was like the worst loss in the history of college football. And they ended up beating USC in the Cotton Bowl. So it wasn't as bad a loss maybe as we originally thought. But no, we had a really good football team. We had an offensive kid named Deuce Vaughn that everybody's heard about that got drafted by the Cowboys. That's the best running back I've ever seen, and did it all. And then we had a kid that got drafted in the first round, and Felix Anudike-Uzama, Kansas City kid. And, we've been trying to preach to our recruits, fan base, whoever it may be, that you can come to Manhattan, Kansas, you can win Big 12 championships, and you can get drafted in the first round. And we were able to do that in 2022.
I remember joking with you. We're at the NFL draft in Chicago, and you're hobnobbing with Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. And then I think I'm looking at the Sugar Bowl, and you're coaching against them. Was that a pinch me moment?
That was going to the media press conference where the two head coaches get together, sit side by side at the table. And I was chuckling, kind of like, what is going on? And Gene's in the background just kind of smiling. And it was a really neat moment that to be on that stage. We didn't fare as well as we would have liked. Had a chance right before half to go ahead, and then we don't. And it snowballed on us. But they had, 5 kids drafted in the first 15, 18 picks too. So, but it was a surreal moment.
How good is Bryce Young? For those of us that are going to watch him in the NFL, you saw him up close. Yeah. How good is he?
Unbelievably accurate. Sees the field. You can't confuse him. Not a very big guy for sure. I know that was the knock on him and stuff. Not a very big guy, but we didn't get enough hits on him. They did a good job protecting him. They had really good receivers, and he put some balls in tight windows. I think he'll be a really good NFL quarterback. Now, is it going to be this first year as a rookie? That's hard to do. Everybody realizes that, but I think he'll be a really good NFL player.
You've now been there. How this crazy? You're going to be your 5th year. Describe the level of enthusiasm for Kansas State football. I know you saw it from afar when the Bison went there in 2013. Now you're in it. What is it like, Chris, on a week of a game day?
Yeah, I had a great appreciation, like we all did at NDSU, coming down here and seeing the fan base and seeing how passionate they were. So I was excited about that opportunity to come down here. I knew it'd be a challenge to follow in Coach Snyder's foottails, but we said we were going to do it, and it's been a blast. It's a passionate fan base, very similar to NDSU. We're a land-grant institution, very similar. It is a small college town, and everything shuts down.
Yeah.
And the whole state comes into Manhattan, Kansas, and we get 53,000 people, and every game sold out. The neat thing for me, Dom, that has kind of changed within athletics, and I noticed this at our football games and men's basketball, the students come out in droves here, and they're right behind the bench for basketball and right behind the bench at the 50-yard line for football. And it is really cool to see 15,000 students at football games and 8,000 students at basketball games. That doesn't happen as much anymore in college athletics, and it's so unique here. And then that creates the atmosphere for sure.
To have a calendar year, and I had Gene on, right around when you guys went in the Sugar Bowl, and then men's basketball is a breath away from making it to the Final Four. I mean, and women's basketball is a solid year. I mean, describe the vibe around K-State right now.
It's at the peak for where I've been here in the 4 to 5 years, going into our 5th year. It's at the peak as far as men's basketball. What a run that Jerome Tang had. Yeah. And they've helped us a ton in recruiting. We've helped them, we believe, a ton in recruiting because their official visit dates are us selling the place out for Oklahoma State on homecoming, we win whatever 48-0 or so. I mean, those are huge, impactful days, and I know that Gene's probably smiling at Detroit Lakes right now because of the successful season that everybody had in 2022. But now we've got to flip the page because we've all been there. You can be successful one year, but we want to build a sustained program and not really just good teams. We want a sustained program here.
So looking at 2023, this is a really odd year for the Big 12 because you got 4 new schools and still Texas and Oklahoma. What do you think the vibe is going to be on Saturdays this year?
Well, the vibe starts next week at the Big 12 Media Days, where we have some newer schools and then the old brigade. It's very it's interesting when you go to the media days and go to our Big 12 meetings because there's the elephant in the room, obviously, that Texas and Oklahoma are still there, but they're here for another year. The other schools are coming in. We get 2 of those schools. We get Houston and UCF this year. We don't play Oklahoma and we don't play West Virginia. So that's going to be unique because I don't remember the last time Kansas State and Oklahoma didn't play. But then in 2024, we don't even have our schedule yet. I think that's you and I talked off air. That's the landscape of college athletics. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's going to be in our league come next year, start of 2024, 2025 season, simply because I don't think this is stopping anytime soon with realignment across the landscape of all college athletics. And the Valley and the Summit League found that out.
Is Oklahoma's ducking you? You've beaten them too much. They don't want any party anymore now.
That it's easy for me to say that because we don't play them unless we get the opportunity in a Big 12 championship, which we would take. We got a long ways to go there, but talk about a cool environment going to Norman and silence in about 80,000 in 2020. Probably not 80,000 there in the pandemic year, but in 2022 they had just crushed Nebraska.
Yep.
We went down there and Adrian Martinez was a pretty good quarterback, and I think he had a little bit extra in the tank on that day. I've never seen a performance like the kid made, like he did at Oklahoma on the road, running, throwing, and that was a huge win for us. It really kind of catapulted us into the season.
So I know this video went viral during the year, Chris, was after you guys beat Iowa State. You gave Gene the biggest of bear hugs. Why was that one? You had won there. That was your first win ever as a head coach at North Dakota State was in Ames. Why was that one so meaningful this past fall?
A couple of reasons. One, I'm an Iowa kid and got a tremendous amount of respect for Coach Campbell and Iowa State. They're a really good program, and they had been really, really sustained success. And I also know because I grew up there and I've followed it the last 5 to 7 years, you go to Ames at night, they have all black uniforms. They typically don't lose. And it was a slugfest back and forth, and it was not your typical Big 12 game, 10-9. I mean, that's not your typical Big 12 game. And it just was a huge road win for us and it led us into an open week. Gene knew that one meant a lot to me. I had a lot of high school buddies there, a lot of family there. So that was a good one to get.
What one was more emotional, that or walking off the field in Iowa City after you guys beat the Hawkeyes?
That was pretty cool because they were ranked, I don't know, in the top 10 or something. That was just such a unique game because of the tie with Gary Barta, the tie with Gene, and the fact that we knew we had a pretty good football team after coming off of 2 double overtime games that we were pretty much gassed. But that was pretty neat as well. So we've had some fun wins. You've been a part of a lot of them.
I've had a front row seat for a couple of them. Matt Larson, by the way, will never schedule that way ever again. You know that. That 2016 schedule was the best non-conference ever.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's hard to get those games to come to the Fargo Dome.
Yes.
And look at Coastal Carolina and some of those schools, they've gone forward, they've moved on. And the Georgia Southern games and thinking, boy, we're close to playing Old Dominion and they go big. I mean, it's just when I played in college, we beat Arkansas State and then lost to Boise State in the FCS or Division I AA playoffs. You just see how football has changed so much.
Chris Klieman joining us, head football coach at Kansas State. You mentioned changes. I asked Matt Entz this. I'll ask you, what is the thing keeping you up more at night? Is it the portal or name, image, likeness right now?
Combination of the two because they're linked side by side. We have a really good culture in our locker room. I don't know, Matt does too, but we have a really good culture in our locker room that kids are going to make money, and I'm fine with that. I think they should. Once they get to their institution and establish their brand and stuff. And I think it's really good for college athletics. We all see, and it's probably, I don't know if this is an accurate statement, it gets overblown more in basketball because you need one or two guys. And so, people are throwing a lot of money at one or two guys to get them on a basketball team. It happens in football, I know, but not to the magnitude probably, simply as well as there's not a whole lot going on in May and June, and other than basketball transfer portal back and forth. So it's a combination of the two. But I know this: you re-recruit your own roster every day. You're around your own guys, and you're showing how much you believe in them, showing how much you care, showing how much you love those guys, because that's what you have to do. You can't. And I've changed a little bit as far as I don't want our coaches going out on the road as much in the fall to recruit the next guy, when you've got to build that relationship on a Friday night in the hotel or in the meetings with your current team.
That's wild. It really is, right? I'm in full favor. I think you know this because the portal really became a thing after you left here, of guys having the ability to move. I have no problem with the name, image, likeness, but it certainly has blown up. It is not what the rule intended. It is clearly not now, where guys are getting sums of money just to commit to a school. That's not what the rule intended.
No, it's not. That's where we wish there's some guardrails going into it. I don't know if that, honestly, Dom, I don't know if that'll happen in my life in coaching. I really don't. Now, on the flip side, I look at it and say, you remember a kid at Northern Iowa named Briley Moore that was a really good tight end there that came to us, got a chance during the pandemic to come to us, come close to home. People can be mad all they want. I sat in Josh Hayes' home in 2016 and recruited that kid to come to North Dakota State and come to Fargo. He left there and went to Virginia, and it didn't work out, and went and re-entered it. And we had a great tie. Coach Klieman and I had a phenomenal tie to the kid. That kid had a great, great year here and gets drafted. And, so there's some really unique, cool stories that the portal has given us too.
I got to ask you about two guys you recruited here that are now going to be in the National Football League. With two totally different paths, Christian Watson and Cody Mauch. I remember you telling me on Christian Watson, I have it on tape so I can show this. Yep. He's going to be a stud for us. Now, as you look, he's going to his second year in the NFL. What was the wow moment you had with him early on?
The explosiveness of him. And if you recall, he was one that put on, 30 pounds and gained 6 inches or something between his junior and senior year, because he wasn't a heavily recruited kid his junior year. And all of a sudden, we saw him on tape. Atif Austin, God love Atif. Atif went down there and busted his tail in the Tampa area. Bruce Anderson was a pretty good player too, and Josh Hayes and stuff. But Christian had a second gear that I didn't think many kids had at the FCS level. Let's be honest, that kid could have done it at any level, and he's doing it now. And I was so happy to see. I don't get a chance to watch much NFL football, but to see how that kid had a phenomenal second half or second third of the season, because he's a quality kid that's a great football player, and he's going to have an unbelievable career.
When you first saw Cody Mauch, what went through your mind?
Dylan Radins, Joe Haig. That's what went through my mind when I first saw him, because he was a big bone kid that hadn't filled out yet. And I know that I told Kramer that this kid, if you get your hands on him, Jim, this kid could be a 300-pounder, and he was whatever, 215, 220. It was a lot like Cordell Volson. When we went and watched him play basketball, and these other four guys on his team were ninth graders that were all 5'4", 5'5", and you see this big Cordell out in this small gym, and I was like, that kid can be special if he puts the weight on. And Cody did that. Cordell did that. How fun was that to watch Cordell's season and story? Riles still keeps track of him and stuff, so it's a lot of fun.
To have two back-to-back guys from North Dakota 9-man schools, it's amazing. To get drafted into the National Football League, I don't know if that's going to happen again.
No, but it's got to help Matt in the fact that you stay in North Dakota and you can get drafted. Yep. And I know that. And, two people I talk to regularly, Coach Ince and Coach Richmond. And those two were two of the closest friends I had. And look what Dave did with the kid from Devil's Lake.
Yeah, I know.
And so it's really, if they can get them to stay home, there's a great chance for those guys to have success and develop. And that's the key to this whole thing. is can you develop them? And we're doing the same thing down at Kansas. We have a lot of 8-man kids here. We bring them in and we're developing them. How long do they develop before they say, okay, is it time for me to move on or can I stick this out?
A couple minutes left here with Chris Klieman. I got to ask, what was the most surprising guy that you saw develop into a really good player in your time in Fargo? Was there one that just like, I don't know about, and then, man, a couple years later, he was a regular for you?
You know, I would probably say Tuska. You know, he was a skinny kid. We recruited his brother, then brought him in, and we're like, this kid's got a chance. He's got some snap to him and stuff. And I knew that kid was an NFL kid. I knew he was an NFL player for sure. And it's easy to look at the linemen and stuff. That's the simple one. But I look at Tuska. That guy he'd have been a all Big 12 player down here. I mean, he had that kind of ability and he had that kind of motor.
I don't want you to get thrown out of your office here when I ask you this question, but it is the 10-year anniversary of North Dakota State's win in Manhattan. Give me your fondest memories of that night and the after effect of what happened that night.
It was hot, if you recall. I mean, it might have been the hottest game that we've ever been involved with, and they still talk about how hot that was. I remember Kramer forcing everybody to have chicken noodle soup at the hotel the night before, and I'm trying to think where the heck we stayed because there's not very many places to stay here with the team. But I remember sitting in the locker room after the game. I think Craig and I were about the last two left in there, and I looked over to Coach and I said, "Coach, this is going to elevate your career fast." And I really felt that. I thought, man, Craig, this is going to elevate your career really. And he just kind of smiled. And, you know, I still talk to Craig. And so I want everybody to know, I mean, that relationship is great. And there's a lot of respect mutually for both Craig and myself and some of the people that have been surrounded by us and helped both of us. But that was, I thought, a signature win for Coach Bohl. We know Minnesota's and stuff were good in Kansas, but that was the signature one.
That play that it was, by the way, it was Grant Olson's only career pick. Where were you? Did you see that happen on the sideline?
I did. I was at about the 40-yard line, and we inducted Tyler Lockett into the Ring of Honor last year, and he's still mad because LeCompte kept kicking it out of bounds, kept angling it and stuff, and he got us one time on a double move for a touchdown. I'll never forget it. And I'm like, you know, Mark Will, that kid can roll. And the kid made a great move and that's why he's 8 years in the league. We never kicked to that guy. And, you know, LeCompte, I see him all the time. He works in our Ahern Fund. So we had a good time. We had a good joke about that. Good laugh.
Well, I remember Dudzik had the big return. That was like the jump start to him. You put him on offense after that game, right?
Absolutely, yes. Studs had a big time return. You know, his folks were graduates of K-State. They've come down to games. Christians come down to games. It's been neat the amount of former players that have come down to games through Gene or through myself. It's been a lot of fun.
I see you got some of your former players that played up here framed behind you. The two of them are going to play together with Easton Stick and Darius Shepard. What do you think that's going to be like this coming fall in Los Angeles?
Well, I'm praying for Shep. He spends a lot of time in Manhattan, comes to the house and stuff.
Nice.
That he gets a chance to stick. And I say that stick with Easton because, you know, Easton's in a great situation there and excited for both those guys. And Shep's an NFL player and belongs there.
It's great to see you, bud. Thanks so much for doing this. Tell Rhonda and the kids I said hello, and have a great year this year. You know there's going to be a ton of people following you up here.
Send the forum plane down here. Tell Kolpak and McFeely to jump on a flight. You guys got an open week. We got room for you down here. All right.
You know where Kolpak is now this week? Do you know where he's at? He's at Pebble Beach covering Amy playing.
Didn't he? U.S. Open. There was a quick story on her last night, right?
Yeah.
And Grant and Amy bought her old house. So I was able to see our old kitchen and stuff. My wife and I laughed about it. It was so cool.
That's awesome. Great to see you, bud. Thanks for the time. We'll talk soon, okay?
Okay, thanks, Dom.
There he goes. Some great stuff there. I could have talked with him for another hour. He would have probably given us the time, but he was gracious enough to spend that amount of time with us and discuss what's going on in college football and at Kansas State and everything in college athletics. And we appreciate Klieman giving us some time. And Kansas State will be an intriguing team to watch. They were preseason picked second in the Big 12. The preseason poll came out last week. Yes, those already came out, with the Big 12 set to have its media days later this week. And with the additions of BYU and Cincinnati and Houston and Central Florida into the Big 12, going to be awfully interesting to see how the new look Big 12 goes going forward, knowing also that this is the swan song for Texas and Oklahoma leaving the Big 12 for the SEC. We appreciate you stopping by. You can listen to all past episodes at inforum.com or wherever you get your podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or at Apple iTunes. We will continue to populate this throughout the summer months and really kick into high gear as we get closer to the start of the football season. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.